Chapter 10. Lulu was out of Pookie's house in 20 seconds flat, promising Pookie's mommy that she would be careful not to hurt the fuzzball's feelings. Holding Pookie with one of her hands and Brutus's leash with the other, Lulu was hurrying over to Cordelia's when Pookie finally opened her eyes and wiggled, and then kind of squeaked, then wiggled and squeaked some more. Lulu understood that this was Pookie's way of saying it was time to do what she was supposed to do, which meant that Lulu needed to stop immediately and set down Pookie underneath a tree, which she did, and then said in a not too patient voice, "Okay, let's get this over with. Do what you're supposed to do. Right now." "She won't if you talk like that," said a voice that belonged, do I have to tell you, to Fleshman. "She needs to be coaxed." "I am not a person who coaxes," Lulu told Fleshman. Then, bending down, she repeated, "Pookie, right now." Except that when she spoke, instead of the pook part rhyming with Duke, Lulu forgot and rhymed it with book, which turned out to be a mistake, a big mistake. Pookie, yelping, leaped up in the air, and instead of falling back down again, she attached herself by her teeth to Lulu's jean jacket. Lulu tried pulling her off. Pookie hung on. Lulu tried pushing her off. Pookie hung on. Lulu tried shaking her off, but the once lazy fuzzball wouldn't let go, hanging on by her teeth and somehow yelping at the same time, which isn't that easy. All of a sudden, out of the blue, Lulu began to hear music. What was this music? Where was it coming from? Well, what do you know? There was Fleshman, who had taken his flute from his backpack and was tootling tunes into Pookie's ear. "Fleshman!" yelled Lulu, still pulling and pushing and trying to shake off Pookie. "Cut out the concert!" "This isn't a concert," said Fleshman. "This is coaxing." Lulu watched with amazement as the yelping Pookie stopped yelping and hanging on by her teeth to Lulu's jacket. Instead, while Fleshman kept playing, Pookie let herself drop to the ground, where quietly, squatting under the big leafy tree, she quickly did what she was supposed to do. Why is everyone saying that Pookie did what she was supposed to do? From now on, I'm just going to say pooped. Fleshman whipped out a pooper scooper, cleaned up the little mess, picked up Pookie, and handed her to Lulu. "Don't thank me," he told her, even though Lulu hadn't said a word. "Actually, I should be thanking you. I should be thanking you for letting me—" "I don't want to hear it, Fleshman," roared Lulu. "I really, really, really don't want to hear it. Now, out of my way. I'm seriously behind schedule." Time out. I just this minute realized, even though I've already told you that Brutus is a great, big, bad, bruised brute, and that Pookie is a tiny, lazy, white fuzzball, I haven't yet said that, along with loving to hide, Cordelia is a long, low, short-legged, hot dog-looking dog whose animal name starts with D, except I can't remember what comes after the D. Oh, and one more thing about Cordelia. She is very, and I mean very, vain. Chapter 11. Lulu, filled with impatience, was standing on Mr. and Mrs. porch, and she was late. Fleshman was waiting patiently under a tree. He was holding on to Pookie, who immediately fell asleep, and gently patting Brutus, who promptly pooped. Mr. and Mrs. weren't upset about Lulu being late because they were busy looking for Cordelia, who, even with Lulu's help, could not be found. Fleshman watched Mr. and Mrs. and Lulu calling, "Cordelia! Cordelia!" as they poked and prodded the junk pile on the porch. And then, because it was getting too late, and even though Lulu scowled to stay out of the scowl, he joined them. Handing the two dogs to Lulu, Fleshman knelt by the pile of junk and started speaking softly in a language that nobody else on that front porch knew. Well, Nobody but Cordelia, because as soon as he started talking, she came popping out of the pile and yapping blissfully, went waddling over to Fleshman. "It's Cordelia!" shouted Mr. "It's Cordelia!" shouted Mrs. "It's time," Lulu announced, "for me to go." Quickly taking over, she attached Cordelia's leash to Cordelia's collar, and holding on to all three dogs, Pookie against her chest, the others on leashes, she turned to Fleshman, nodded, and said, "I'm leaving." That nod was maybe Lulu saying thank you, or maybe not. Fleshman, though not invited, was leaving with Lulu, but Mr. and Mrs. first had two questions to ask. What kind of language did Fleshman speak to Cordelia, and what exactly did he say to her? "I spoke in German," Fleshman explained, "because Cordelia is a dachshund, and dachshunds are German. I also know how to talk to French poodles in French." Then he told Mr. and Mrs. what he said to Cordelia to make her come out of hiding, but I really don't feel like discussing that right now. Chapter 12. 6.5 minutes later, evening up with Brutus and Pookie, Cordelia